All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Scott Parker, Senior Product Marketing Manager here at SolarWinds MSP. And with me here today is Mahmoud, Senior Product Marketing Manager as well.
Hi, everyone.
Today, we're going to be introducing you to the latest release of the MSP N-central platform, version 11. Much more than simple automation. First of all, for those of you not overly familiar with SolarWinds MSP, SolarWinds MSP came about with the acquisition of both SolarWinds Enable and now Logic Now by SolarWinds, and that has created a combined company of SolarWinds MSP. That has given us several advantages in the marketplace, which I know I'm very excited about. It brings us a peer group of over 20,000 MSPs, which is a huge group of MSPs to work with. And, myself having come from an MSP environment and Ali having some experience as well, I know that I got, a lot of benefit from just talking to others in my own peer group. So the wider that peer group is, the more experience I can draw on. So I'm really happy to see that we now have that available to us. That also brings us 5 million plus managed devices, over 160,000 small medium businesses managed by the SolarWinds MSP platforms, and over 200 plus new partners a month. So growth is fantastic. I've met a ton of really interesting people over the last year. It's been really quite an exciting year for us, for sure.
And I would encourage you that if we're in the area and you see a notice for one of our events, feel free to tag along. And like Scott said, it's just great to meet up with other MSPs. And both of us are very familiar with lots of different IT-focused groups. And sometimes there are technical topics you want answered, but those IT topics aren't always focused to MSPs. So if you're doing IT service, I really recommend you attend some of those events to meet your peers and talk about the business and the technical side of being an IT service provider.
Yeah, having been in the MSP industry, I know one of the most fun things I did was attend trade shows and get to mingle. And our events, I feel, are really, really excellent for that. They're definitely the most fun I have all year. So yeah, we definitely encourage people to attend. SolarWinds MSP, of course, continues its ongoing commitment to the MSP market. In 2015, we had two major releases of the N-central product. That was 10.0 and 10.1. They brought a lot of really excellent features to the table, a lot of new things for us, a lot of stuff around reactive management, so behind the scenes work so that you don't necessarily need to remote control into a system to take care of the problem. Really big leaps forward as far as automation is concerned. Patch management underwent a lot of change and brought a lot of new features to the table. Customer sites were introduced, allowing you to really kind of granularly break up environments in any way you wish and manage them that way. We acquired two new companies as well. We brought MSP Manager into the fold, which is a fantastic service management and ticketing platform, and MSP Anywhere, which is a really strong remote control tool. And I've used many over the years, and MSP Anywhere blew me away when I used it, and it's now fully integrated into the N-central system and available to you. In 2016 and now 17, we've had two major releases as well. That's N-central 10.2 and N-central now 11. We brought MSP Anywhere, the remote control tool, into the UI and integrated it, calling it MSP Connect. And it goes beyond simply offering remote control. It has a whole suite of diagnostics and tools and all the things you wish you had at your fingertips when you're in the middle of a remote control session. It brings that to the table, and it does it extremely well, and it's extremely fast and very reliable. It's a really great remote control option for us. Patch management underwent a lot of enhancements, as I mentioned. We introduced a lot of flexibility as far as controlling patch management. We are, of course, WSUS-less, so it's a completely integrated solution into the N-central platform. But it really allows you to either automate everything top-down or get into granular, segmented kind of patching if you need test groups and that sort of thing. So it really brought a lot to the table there for patch management. And role-based user permissions. We're going to take a look at that today as well. Role-based user permissions allow companies who are particularly focused on security to really begin to assign specific roles and tasks to their individual users in the system and ensure that people aren't impacting things they shouldn't be or have access to everything they need while they're out in the field. So we'll take a walk through that as well today. And we brought in two new products as well this year. So another two that both I found very interesting. MSP Risk Intelligence. Risk Intelligence is a internal vulnerability tool. It's going to allow you to find data that is at rest on systems and at risk of exposure and identify that for you. So a quick run through the environment with this tool will find the things like HR has a pile of personal and data and information sitting in a Dropbox folder or in an open share. Or perhaps accounting has a share folder that is accessible by employees that probably shouldn't have access to it, and that sort of thing. So it really kind of pulls all that together for you in a really nice, easy to understand report, and then quantifies it in terms of industry standard dollar values that would be applied should a breach occur. So it gives you a feel and a way to communicate that potential risk in dollar values in a way that is understood by almost everyone. So you're not talking complex security issues. You're getting right to the heart of the matter, which is if this information was breached, we could be under a lot of financial stress. And it represents that really well. And I encourage you to take a look at that. And MSP Backup and Recovery, I know very near and dear to Ali's heart. We've introduced a fantastic hybrid cloud solution that we're going to talk about in depth today. And it's, of course, been fully integrated into N-central 11, so right out of the dashboard. Now, for those new to the SolarWinds MSP N-central platform, what is N-central? Well, N-central is a remote monitoring and management solution trusted by, as I mentioned, over 20,000 MSPs globally today. It comes integrated, fully integrated with patch, antivirus, backup, mobile management, that amazing remote control I mentioned, and much more. The advanced behind-the-scenes support capabilities that came in last year, I've had a ton of excellent feedback from it, and I know that, having been in the technical shoes at one point, it would be nice if I was able to get into the back end of a system and resolve problems without having to interrupt the users, and just trying to get them at their desk and in a time that's good for them is always hard. There's a ton of new behind-the-scenes remote support tools that we've introduced that I think you would find very valuable. Customer-facing reporting and analytics is deep within the SolarWinds N-central product. We've built things like executive summaries that specifically speak to your role in a quarterly business review or as a virtual CIO. Things that introduce not only technical details of what's going on in the environment, but also deep information that you can use to increase sales and bring things to light for your customers, such as third-party patch management. For example, we notice in your environment there's a lot of JavaScript or Adobe that's out of date. Allow us to take care of that for you, and here's kind of what that would look like, and present that to a customer in a way that they'll understand and they'll appreciate. Efficiency through drag and drop automation that you can really use. A lot of tools out there today. Tout automation is definitely a very common thread through RMM platforms. However, having experienced a lot of it, the problem is implementation. It's very hard to use a lot of these automation platforms because you either have to learn a whole scripting language or learn their proprietary scripting language, which makes it very hard to use. And once you've got the scripting, implementation across multiple customers, multiple devices can be complex. With the N-central system, you'll find it's a drag and drop interface. You don't need to be a coder or scripter to use it, which is good because I'm not. However, in minutes, I was able to start producing really complex maintenance scripts and deploy them out to systems.
Yeah, Scott, so just for everyone on the line, we recently did a market survey surveying thousands of MSPs, and the feedback that we got is that RMM today is at about 80% penetration in the market, meaning 80% of MSPs are using some form of remote monitoring and management. And by the end of 2017, it's expected that 90% of MSPs will be using some form of remote monitoring and management. We did another survey to over 20,000 MSPs in our customer base, and the number one thing that they saw the value of RMM bringing to the table was efficiency. So that point there is just, I think, critical to take a second to talk about, Scott. And and if you had to talk to an MSP about efficiency, because efficiency can mean different things to different people. And when I picture the average managed service provider, IT service business at 5 employees and $1 million in revenue, or 15 employees and $10 million in revenue, just as a range, how are they going to use N-central really on a day-to-day basis just to automate and do their job faster, get manual work out of the way? What are some practical tips that they could take away from that?
For sure. Well, the introduction of an RMM into my own business at the time really brought a lot of things to the table. Onboarding new environments can be a painful experience, especially if it's all simply boots on the ground kind of activity. People go out and, I send a tech out, they go out with a piece of paper or maybe a tablet. They write down everything they can, what devices are there, what IPs are there. They get a good sense for what the equipment is. But it always leaves it open to human error and interpretation. And so what I found was we would miss a custom-made application that was in that environment. We would miss a wireless router hidden up in the ceiling. One of these things may have been critical to that business, and months down the road, when we've signed a contract, we are now responsible for that environment. One of these things goes down, and we have no knowledge of this thing because it was well hidden and it wasn't brought to the surface by the customer. And now we're in a situation where that piece of software was written by some college kid 20 years ago, and no one has access to him or the code. So now we have a piece of software that has introduced vulnerability into the environment, and we're responsible for, and we're in that weird gray area where we're not quite sure what to do about it. With an RMM tool, that onboarding process is significantly more advanced. It's going to go out and scan for everything with an IP. It's going to inventory every piece of software. We're going to have complete visibility into that, and we're going to be able to surface that to the customer and show it to them and circle and highlight the important pieces that we're not entirely sure about, but we need clarification on before we get that contract signed. Beyond that, onboarding devices, a lot of products out there today require you to get out there and make changes to Active Directory or wander around with a USB key and install agents. And Central system is really advanced as far as it uses a probe in the environment and deploys automatically and automatically pushes agents out. And with automation built into the N-central system and mostly out of the box to get this done, it just simply applies the monitoring I need, applies the notifications I need, can apply maintenance and automation. All these things just automatically apply because I've told the system that's what I want it to do. And that saves hundreds of man hours for sure. And beyond that, just your day-to-day tasks. It used to be, in the early days of an MSP, you're rolling trucks, you're getting people out in the environments, and your customers kind of come to expect that they're going to see a tech 3-4 times a week. We want to move away from that. We don't want to be sending our techs on site, that often. That's time wasted and dollars spent in gas and mileage. What I want to be able to do is remote control out to that system and immediately solve the problem. Or through the back end, through what we call direct support, I want to be able to go in, get to a command prompt, make some changes, adjust your startup files, edit your registry, and I've solved your problem while you were still working. Ideally, that's kind of how I want my team to be functioning. It's far more efficient to do that than it is to get out on site. So I think there's a lot that we can bring to the table with a good RMM tool. Finally, N-central also offers integration with major PSA solutions. So if you have a ticketing or service management solution like MSP Manager, we're going to directly integrate with that. N-central, as it finds things, is going to create your tickets for you as those things are solved. It's going to be able to close them, apply time and billing, and that sort of thing. Really granular control over that too if you want it. Stress-free scalability for growing MSPs. So as you start adding more and more customers, the system you've already set up at the beginning just remembers what you set up. It remembers how you like to tackle those kinds of environments. You're simply going to tell that probe to go and identify everything in there and onboard it, and then you're going to go have lunch, and it pretty much takes care of itself at that point. It's going to onboard devices and apply everything you need it to do, and you maybe do a little bit of tweaking at the end, but it's taken hours of your onboarding time out of your schedule, which is great because it gives you time back. And of course, we have tools for almost every problem out there in the SolarWinds MSP world. So, things like risk intelligence, MSP mail, allow you to bring value add products and security products into your customer environment that you may not be able to deliver today, but certainly is a big value add for you and creates a differentiation between you and the other guy who's coming in the door who probably doesn't have all this backing him up. So it's always nice to have more information and offer more services than the next guy in the most professional way possible. Let's just talk a little bit about a quick technical overview then. So I talked a little bit about deployment. For those of you who aren't familiar, I'm just going to run through a quick new slide we worked up to give you a brief overview of how N-central works. So your MSP N-central server, whether it be hosted or on premises, we're going to use that to deploy our probe, and we're going to put that probe into a customer environment, typically on a server. It doesn't need a dedicated server though, just something in there that's got a little bit of free space. It's really just a Windows service that's going to run. That probe is going to go out and detect everything with an IP, and then it's going to automatically onboard them if you've directed it to do so. If you don't want it to, you just want a big list, you can certainly do that as well. But typically I would say once you've got it set up, you're going to be confident in the system to take care of itself. It's going to detect everything and onboard them. It's going to deploy agents out to your Windows systems. We also have Mac agents and Linux agents. Your laptops, if they roam out of the environment, they now have an agent on them, and those agents call directly back to N-central, so you don't need to worry about where they happen to be. So if they're in a hotel somewhere in Amsterdam, no problem. You still have full support and full monitoring for those devices. For things like network devices, so your printers and routers, they are going to report back into that probe, so the probe takes care of them. That's going to allow us to look at things like printer toner capacity, page capacity, what your router and network devices are doing, including traffic and interface health. All the network information that you might need is represented in the dashboard, represented by device. Something to watch out for. I've noticed a lot of RMM products out there today really focus on the minutia, and they don't necessarily get into things like Internet of Things and your network devices. So if that's something that you're particularly interested in, you're going to want to be looking at an RMM product that does onboard network devices and does have information for them. Through N-central, you're going to be able to deploy our integrated AV backup and patch management systems, and these are all top-tier products. AV Defender, which is our AV product, is using a Bitdefender engine, which is one of the industry's best. Backup, we have MSP Backup and Recovery, which is a fantastic product, alongside a few others. And patch management, as I mentioned, is fully native and includes third-party patch as well, so your JavaScripts, your Adobe readers, etc. So all that is completely deployable from the N-central system out to these devices without you having to go on site and make any changes. Of course, we're going to manage your cloud services as well, so we're talking things like Office 365. We also manage your ESX systems, your VMware, and we can interface with Azure and Amazon Web Services, and there's a whole complement of services for that as well. Now, when you have problems out there in that environment, there is a whole suite of automation built into the N-central product, so you don't have to build everything out of the box as you would with some products. In this case, it's pretty much made available to you for common maintenance tasks and common technical tasks. You can create things like self-healing, so let's say a drive is filling up. When it hits a warning state, so not a failed state, but we hit a warning, we can have the system kick off and try and take care of that by clearing out things like temporary files or specific database files or things that you're aware of that may fill up on that particular system, or a more generic general cleanup. So there's a lot of automation built in there to kind of take care of those tier, the early tier kind of problems. Beyond that, it will escalate through a robust notification and escalation system. That's going to go out to your mobile device application, directly to your technicians on the schedule they've made themselves available. And of course, we're going to push tickets into your PSA and ticketing system. And finally, once you've completed all these tasks for your customer, you've kept their environment happy and healthy, we're going to produce some really excellent reports. Report Manager is a system that you can get included with the on-premise version of the N-central product, and it offloads all the data that N-central has and allows you to manipulate it into large executive summaries, deep software summaries, as well as hardware information. You can produce reports that I personally like, for example, hardware refresh planning, which is always nice to be involved in with your client, so you can guide their refresh plan over time and all sorts of things like that. So about 65 additional reports in there as well. So reporting becomes, of course, one of the main interfaces with your customer, and N-central delivers on that. So let's move on to what's new in N-central 11. So of course, MSP Backup and Recovery, that's one of the newest things, and Ali's going to tell us all about that. But it really is an excellent new hybrid cloud option that I really feel suits the MSP world exceedingly well. And so I definitely want us to spend a little bit of time talking about that. But we've also introduced role-based user permissions, which give you the ability to control access for each of your N-central users. Custom PSA integration, so if you're coming to the table with a PSA that maybe isn't one of the mainstream PSAs or a homegrown solution, we've increased our API capabilities to allow you to manipulate tickets and information within the N-central system. We've added some enhanced monitoring, so that's some new Oracle database queries, Exchange, Active Directory, DRA improvements. The patch homepage brings everything patch related together into one nice easy package, and it makes it easy to manipulate that information and have a holistic view of patch management across your systems. Two-step verification using Google Authenticator. So this is a new way to do a two-step verification and increase security of your N-central system. Downtime in maintenance windows. So instead of a single maintenance window where you suppress alerts from a given device while you're doing stuff with it, we've given you the ability now to create what's called a maintenance window and multiple maintenance windows to put a system into downtime and suppress notifications during multiple times during a day, in case you have a server that perhaps does some really heavy lifting at a certain time and you're not interested in alerts during that period because you're aware that it's going to be overtaxed. We've introduced Mac scripting. We have a lot of options now for Mac, as well as remote control, monitoring, and now scripting. So you can really bring the power of an RMM to your Mac environments using Bash and AppleScript. We've improved a lot of the UI. Obviously over the last couple of years, we spent a lot of time making the UI intuitive, nice to look at, easy to flow through, and we've just brought more and more improvements as the years go on. So we've started saving the configuration you have of each screen under each device, so the system will remember how you set things up and how you like it, and will maintain that. The active issues will now be streamlined a little bit. The monitoring tabs, which required a couple clicks to get to in previous iterations, now have a direct link from your main view. And loading of pages, which can get big as you add a lot more customers, has been greatly improved. So loading large amounts of customer data has been sped up considerably. And AV Defender has rolled out its version 6 upgrade, which is a newer, lightweight engine, and I've seen a lot of great improvements on that as well. AV, no matter what solution you choose, can be a bit of a burden on individual systems, and AV Defender 6 strives to address that, so it's really a nice add-on. And then remote control automation. Some remote control you will notice out there in the world tries to use hardware acceleration, and this has been a problem throughout all sorts of different remote control. We've introduced some logic so that the system will determine if hardware acceleration is right for you, and if it isn't, it turns it off, and if it is, it'll turn it on. What I'd like to do is delve into 5 of these particular items that I feel make a big difference to our MSP community. And Ali, I'd like you to start, if you could, with backup and recovery.
Happy to. So hi everyone, Ali Mahmoud here. I manage marketing and strategy for the backup product. For those of you who are familiar with Max Backup, this is Max Backup rebranded. So now that it's part of the SolarWinds MSP family, you're going to be seeing that MSP before a lot of our product names. MSP Backup and Recovery, like Scott said earlier, I think is the one-stop shop for everything an MSP needs when it comes to backup. I say that with a caveat that there is no product that is a one-stop shop for absolutely everything. I'm aware of that for MSPs. There's just too much complexity when it comes to IT. There are too many different types of environments. If you wanted the world's greatest virtualization solution for this one specific type of environment, I probably wouldn't say use us to manage all of those devices. But when you think of, on a daily basis, everything that you do when it comes to backup, it's pretty simple what MSPs are looking for. You really just want something that's reliable, covers 99% of the scenarios, and when I need it, I'm going to be able to restore quickly, right? That's when the customer is yelling at you. So with that in mind, let's talk about MSP Backup and Recovery. So the reason we're talking about it today is Max Backup as you knew it, and now MSP Backup and Recovery is fully integrated into N-central. So kind of moving towards that all-in-one solution. While I'm in N-central, I'm doing monitoring on devices. I have a dual role, right? I have to make sure that everything else is working in my customer environment. Then I can jump over to backup and take care of that and make sure that all of the backups are successful, or perform a restore if I need it. So just having everything that you need in one console is definitely a plus. But for those of you who don't know the product as well, I do want to give a really quick overview. So when we say hybrid, you'll hear hybrid cloud, there's lots of jargon out there. When I say hybrid, I kind of mean hybrid everything. So this is a solution that's not limited to one type of backup. It's not just file and folder. It's not just image-based. It's not just Exchange or database. It doesn't do just one thing. It does. You can recover your files. I could do an entire database or down to a specific database table, or I can do the entire system. So from a which type of data, it's truly hybrid. I can do anything. When it comes to devices, is it more tailored to workstations or servers? It's not. It's hybrid. It does both. So the idea that I can back up any type of data on any type of workstation is really, really flexible for today's MSP. And I think that, from the MSPs that I talk to about backup, at the end of the day, your number one concern is reliability. We have that. Beyond that, once you can check that box, now you're looking for efficiency, right? How do I manage hundreds of devices? How do I manage all of these different use cases that my customers are asking me for? And I think that when you talk about a combo solution, so when I can walk into a customer and say, yes, these are your critical data servers, you have a data store over here, you have a network share, we're going to back up all of that. But now you can start having a conversation with the CEO, the head of finance, the legal department, and you can say, what happens when you've worked an entire week on a document, forgot to copy it to the network share, or you are traveling and you lose the data on your workstation? What's the cost of replacing that data, right? What if you need that data because you're about to walk into a customer environment and make a sales pitch? What if it's a legal document, I'm negotiating a deal with a customer and I lose that data? Yes, it's a couple days to recreate those contracts and everything, but I might actually lose the business in the process of waiting to recreate. So the thing that I know for certain when it comes to technology, and let's say life, so death and taxes are certainties in life. Data is a certainty when it comes to technology, and you need a good backup solution going forward. Whether or not all devices at a customer site are going to move to the cloud, who knows what's going to be the next wave 6 years from now? Data is always going to be important. The final point that I had there, when I talk about cloud, some people can get nervous and say, yeah, if I'm backing up a terabyte from a server and I want to restore an entire system, I'm not going to download that from the cloud. And you don't have to with our solution. So there is on-site copies and off-site copies in the cloud. So you have both locations. We're definitely using best practices. So 3 copies of the data, 2 types of media, 1 off-site. I think that a lot of MSPs already have the tools that they could manually do this, right? Almost every MSP I talk to has at least a couple backup solutions that they use. And we've actually done a couple studies to find that MSPs can get as high as 30 to 40 different backup solutions at the higher end. So the question I think you need to ask yourself is, what are you losing when it comes to efficiency when you have that many different backup solutions? And is it time to consolidate into one? I think recovery, just to kind of, talk to this point a little bit more, whether you have a physical workstation, a physical server, a virtual environment, all you care about is making a copy of that data, and then when the customer comes screaming or something goes wrong because you're proactively monitoring it, you can quickly restore that. So there's 3 ways to do that. 1, keep a standby image, so a full image of the entire system. That's your fastest restore on a local piece of hardware. The second is have a local file copy of all files. This is what's going to let you recover just down to a single file. And a lot of people think that image-based restore is the fastest, but if I have to mount an image just to go looking for a single file, that's not a very efficient way to recover data. That's why we do both full standby images and a full local copy of each individual file. And then off-site, you have that full cloud copy where I could recover an entire image or a file. So I say flexible options, but the key here is speed. If a customer is off-site and you only have 1 copy of their data at your office or at their office, but the customer is not there, the fastest way to recover is not to ship a drive to them so they can do recovery. That's when you're going to want to use the cloud. For everything else on premises, you're definitely going to want a standby image or a full copy for any data that has to have a fast restore time. When I talked about consolidation, this is what I mean. On the left, when I see MSPs using 3 different solutions to manage 3 different environments, or I see them relying on 1 type of software for image, 1 type of software for file and folder, another type for a third environment, what I want for every MSP is to consolidate so that they can get efficiency. If you have 1 solution that has a view of all 100 devices for your customers, and again, I caveat that when I say all, I know that there's going to be that 1 or 2 servers that are a very specific use case that I would prefer that you went to some other specific software to solve that exact problem. But for everything else, you have a view of every device. You know if your backups were successful. You can quickly restore any of those devices down to a full image or a file. I think that is kind of the peace of mind, the holy grail for every technician is how do I just have complete visibility and quickly be able to restore anything at any time from anywhere. And because it's a web console, I could be on the road, right? So there's this scenario of it's 5 o'clock, I've checked out, I'm going home to pick up the kids because I got to take them to soccer practice or wherever. I get the call from the customer that something critical has failed. I just go to a Starbucks, find a Wi-Fi hotspot. I can log in, restore their data from wherever I am, right? So there's all that flexibility, I think, that we're hearing a lot of great things about from our MSPs. Just to go a little bit deeper, if you're interested, when you talk about cloud, data sovereignty becomes a huge topic of interest. We're pretty flexible there. So data centers in Canada, the US, Netherlands, UK, Germany, and Australia. We are adding more data centers as time goes on. So as soon as we basically hit enough MSPs in an area of the world, we spin up a new data center. So that I would encourage you to look into that when you're thinking about this product. Make sure that it's right for you. Come talk to us. I think that we're covering all of the features, and we're certainly going to spin up data centers in everywhere that we need to in the entire world. I often get asked about deduplication, so there's concerns about transferring all this data off-site directly to the cloud. So the way that we're working is when you've set up your local copy of the data that I had mentioned, that local copy can reside on any type of hardware. So if you have extra hardware laying at your office, if the customer has spare hard drive space anywhere, we're not making you use a proprietary piece of hardware that you have to buy from us. Any hard drive will suffice on the customer site. So we make the local copy first, then we're slowly trickling offsite to the cloud, which means you get to set the times that you want data to go offsite. Everything is data deduped from each individual client side. It's not a global dedupe across every device, it's per client dedupe. But what we've seen is that after the initial seeding, which even for a terabyte data set on a server is just a couple days. So after that first couple days of seeding, you're transmitting less than 1% of data on a change basis going forward. So bandwidth has never been a concern that I've heard. CPU and impact on the end machine, the server or the workstation, has never been a concern. I think we're less than 1% CPU utilization, even at peak transfer times. So like a really good story all around is that it does everything. I get that offsite copy really easily, and I'm not hurting bandwidth or my customer's workstation performance. And then probably the final thing I would talk about is people want to know about virtual recovery. So let's say there's an on-premise server, it's the only one there, and it's running a critical database, and that database goes down. Well, you, the good MSP, have created a virtual backup of that using MSP Backup and Recovery. You can now take that virtual image and you can restore it to Azure, Amazon, or to your private cloud to get that database back up and running so that your customers can have access to that data. So I hope that addressed some of the, those are the kind of the FAQ type questions that I get. I definitely will be sitting on the chat as Scott goes through the rest of the presentation. So if there are any more questions about backup, we'll go into that. But also we have that about 15-minute Q&A at the end. So we're happy to take a deeper dive there. Scott?
All right. Thanks, Ali. All right. Let's talk a little bit about role-based user permissions, which is a big new thing in N-central 11. So role-based user permissions uses a few different things. First of all, we have roles. Roles, for example, might be general device managers, and it may be something a little more locked down, like patch, AV, or backup configurators. So two different roles that suit two different types of technicians or access. We're going to have access groups, and that is access to your service organization levels, your customers, or their individual sites. So we might have, for example, let's say two. All customers' sites, and maybe something a little more locked down, something for specific customers and sites, because we're going to have some technicians that specifically deal with one or two customers and nobody else. And then we have what's called a user profile. So in this case, we have user A, he's a level 3 technician. User B, also a level 3 technician, but maybe he's a little more segmented. He's only concerned with a couple of sites. And user C, our level 1 technician, or our help desk tech, perhaps. What we can do is we can assign, for example, perhaps general device management to all three of these technicians because they need the ability to manipulate individual devices in basic ways. For a couple of these more advanced techs, we're going to give them those patch AV or backup roles, for example, but our level 1 technician, we're not going to assign him those roles, so he won't have those abilities. As far as access goes, maybe user A and user C are going to get access to all sites, so they manage across everything that we manage. But user B, he's only interested in one particular site, so we're going to assign him that access directly to the specific site. This allows us to customize each user with specific privileges tailored to your compliance needs and your security needs. There's no overlap. Rules only add permissions, so there's no digging through rules to figure out which rule added and then took away an access point. So rules will only ever add things. There's an intuitive display per role of what its granted permissions are. So we have a really nice overview in the system of what each user has and what roles they've got. And by default, we won't change anything during your upgrade. So if you're coming from an older version of N-central and upgrading, we're going to maintain your existing permissions, and then you'll have the ability to go in and add to them or adjust them later. Let's talk a little bit about two-step verification. So this is also something we've introduced with version 11. It really adds an extra layer of security to your MSP N-central server with two-step authentication. We're going to leverage a very well-respected service such as Google Authenticator, as long as it's using the RFC 6238 specification. And there's several out there. In this instance, I'm going to talk about Google, but there's a few out there. And it's simple, it's affordable, it's effective, multi-level access control for everybody. So as opposed to some two-step authentication systems that require a fairly heavy investment, this is very light on the pocketbook, but gives you that ability to simply pull out your cell phone, scan a QR code, it gives you that validation, and you can log in your N-central server with your login, your password, and your validation code. So really adds a nice extra layer of security. Now, having previously been the product manager for patch management, I'm very excited to see changes in patch management as we move forward. So what have we introduced? Well, we've introduced what's been, I think, called the patch homepage. Problems with patch management across many different platforms that I've tried is that it can get very complicated. If you have complex environments that require test groups or segmented groups of systems, trying to maintain visibility into all of that can get complex. So we've attempted to address that for you by making it as simple as possible and drawing all of your patch management configuration into a single screen for you. So all of your management from one screen. All of your help and guidance is readily available as well. So you're going to have all the videos for patch management there, direct access to all the patch management information from there. We're going to give you direct visibility into your rules and maintenance that's been configured. So all those maintenance windows we introduced a while ago to give you the control you need over when patches are downloaded, distributed, and installed, and when reboots occur. You're going to have visibility into what each of those rules is that's patch enabled and exactly what maintenance windows they deploy. We're going to be able to look directly in your patch cache statuses. So where you had to go 2 or 3 screens away to get that information, we've drawn that right up for you. And as you know, if a patch cache is down, the system is either not going to patch at all, or it's going to try and reach out to Windows Update. So ideally, you should know where these things or what these things are doing. This gives you that visibility and ability to correct it right there. We also have direct access to your patch profiles from the screen, so you can see all the profiles that are out there, what customers they're deployed to, how they're in use. We, of course, also have patch approval and automation built right into that one screen. So you can choose to go off and do it by device, by customer, or set up your auto approvals all in one place. And as you may recall, we introduced in version 10.2, I believe, of N-central, the patch setup wizard. So you're going to have direct access into your patch setup wizard as well. And this is another big plus. Setting up patch management initially can definitely be a bit of a learning curve in most RMM systems. We endeavored to give you a really easy to follow wizard to simply click through with really excellent intuitive defaults. And we feel that made a big difference to our customers using patch management, and simplified a lot of things for you. And we have that access available for you from the patch homepage as well. Report Manager. For those of you looking at Report Manager, what's come out new in Report Manager? We've introduced schedule report profiles. That's going to allow you with a few clicks to schedule one report across multiple customers with just the right configuration for you, which is a real time saver. A disk trending report, which I really like. It's going to be able to calculate the disk space usage of individual drives and provide an estimated date of when that drive is likely going to be full, so you can help predict that fullness and reach out to your customers and proactively help them deal with that problem. For those of you doing large data dumps from N-central to the report manager system, we've got some new ETL reports for you. They're designed really to help you troubleshoot anything with regards to the bandwidth consumption of that data coming out of the system, and really kind of helps you target exactly the thing that's maybe causing you an issue and deal with it right then and there. And there's been some UI updates and enhancements as well to how you generate reports. So here's just a sample of the disk usage trending report. Very simple, draws you a really nice graph of the trend of individual drives color-coded so that you can see the standout ones and the ones that are going to approach capacity quickly. The report details will highlight the drives that it expects to run out of space in a short given period of time. The ETL performance report looks a lot like this. We're looking, of course, for spikes as far as bandwidth consumption is concerned to readily draw your eye to the thing that needs some attention. So those are all the new and exciting things that we have in the N-central platform for you. If you want to try out the N-central platform, I very much encourage you to load up a free trial. No obligation. You go to n-able.com/try and you'll have the ability to fire up a trial right then and there. If you're interested in a daily demo, so more of a deeper technical walkthrough, when you sign up for a trial, you're going to be invited to one of those. I highly recommend you attend. They're given by our sales engineering team here and usually is about 45 minutes to an hour with a deep walkthrough of the N-central system. So if you really want to get into the details, that's the one to go to. And of course, for more information on SolarWinds MSP products, you can visit SolarWindsMSP.com, our brand new website that has more and more content every day. So keep your eye on that website. And certainly we'd be very excited to talk to you. So if you have any questions, do let us know. And Ali, really thank you very much for attending with me today and presenting N-central 11. I know I'm really excited about it. We've had a ton of positive feedback so far. It is available now for download and trial. And that includes MSP Backup and Recovery, which you can also get into and try out, which I think is exciting.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Scott. And thanks everyone for attending and listening through that. We are going to jump into Q&A now, so go ahead and get your questions into the chat box. I've been furiously typing. I hope that wasn't disrupting Scott's presentation, but it's really good just to have conversations with people about, people really wanted to go deep dive on backup, which is my favorite thing to talk about. So I tried to answer as many of those as I can. I'll recap a couple of them just for the benefit of the audience, but please make sure that you get your questions in if there's anything you want answered. We want to make sure that we address that. It's a great chance for us to talk with all of you, so don't miss that chance. So one of the questions I had, and this is a common question, is with MSP Backup, can I get basically just your cloud software for my private data center so that I can use my own hardware? And the answer is it depends. It's a tough question for us. There are definitely a couple MSPs that were large enough for us that basically they accepted, certified training, and they're experts in delivering backup, so that we knew that, the onboarding wouldn't be difficult for us, the support cases, etc. Basically, we worked out a system with them where that would work, but it's definitely not the majority. And I think what you're going to find is that with a company our size, with 20,000 MSPs, with the resources that we have available to us, the size of our data centers and the costs that we're paying on that scale is going to be equal to or better than the average MSPs. So I think at the end of the day, what you'll find is that having us host it is peace of mind for you, and the costs are there and very reasonable. Scott, there was a question about N-central's ability to monitor third-party systems. So we talk about endpoint monitoring and the health and the status of a device, but what about the software applications that are running on that? So if there's a third-party antivirus or things like that, can you monitor services, etc.?
Yeah, so absolutely. I would say N-central has probably one of the biggest inventories of that kind of thing going. So not only do we, of course, monitor all forms of hardware pretty much, either right out of the box or through custom monitoring, which can be built through Automation Manager, and so predicated on scripts, predicated on logs, WMI, SNMP, and a whole host of other ways that you can connect to and monitor various things. We include application monitoring out of the box as well for all your standard stuff. So your Oracle, your SQL, your Exchange, all your network devices, for example, things like SonicWall and Cisco devices, Fortinet devices, the list really does go on. So we have built into the system what we call templates for all of these things predefined, so you can go in and simply, well, actually the system goes in and automatically deploys these templates to the devices as it detects them, reads its asset data, understands what the device is, and then deploys the template and notifications to it. So absolutely. When it comes to other things, for example, primary tools like AV or backup, we have monitoring for, I think it is over 35 different types of AV at this point. Untold amounts of backup. I couldn't even tell you how many backup solutions. So if you're not using one of our solutions, chances are out of the box there's monitoring for the thing that you want. And if there isn't, very easily you can apply monitoring to that device, build it the way you like it, and template it so that you can then use it on future devices. So you can create what's called a rule using a nice filter that identifies, asset information, name equals Cisco, for example, and anything it finds with the Cisco 5504 or what have you, simply applies that template to it. So yes, absolutely, you can monitor your hardware, you can monitor connections, you can monitor applications, and through custom monitoring, you can monitor almost anything. I think we have some customers who monitor things like gas pumps, ranging to multimedia systems and beyond.
Okay, great. Next question was, with N-central, is it possible to start small, i.e. just monitoring servers, and scale up later?
Of course, yeah, absolutely. So you're not locked into monitoring anything in particular. If you want, you can tell your probe to simply go out and onboard just the servers. So it'll identify everything with an IP. It'll give you a big list of them, but it will automatically onboard things that it identifies as a server. So it can bring those in. You can start easily by just dealing with that stuff. And that's certainly kind of how I progressed. I started with servers, and workstations kind of took a back seat. But I realized over time there was a lot of money to be made in the workstation game. And so I definitely wanted to move into that. So I did start creating packages around workstations, things like automated maintenance. I used to send a guy out weekly to walk around and do workstation maintenance. I discovered pretty quickly you could automate a lot of what got done there, and instead I could dedicate that guy and his team to bigger things like projects that made me money. So get my techs on projects, get N-central dealing with the basic, cleaning out your temporary files and that sort of stuff. And absolutely there's value in having the workstations deployed. In addition to that, backup and remote control and AV are all really well managed through the N-central platform. So it is definitely an advantage to be able to have my remote control tools and backup and AV directly deployed out to those workstations.
Yeah, and Scott, maybe just based on all the research we've been doing lately, talk about Essentials, the free license that we have that comes with your package, and the interesting trend we saw where people at the smaller end are actually using more Essentials than the largest of MSPs, which was very interesting for us.
That's true. It does. Essential licenses, we have professional and essential licenses. Usually during your purchase of N-central, you'll be purchasing professional licenses, which give you the entire breadth of what the system does, but you will get some essential licensing, and of course can purchase more, and they are sort of a scaled down agent that gives you the bare essentials, but in addition to that, you can purchase a la carte, things like patch, backup, and AV, and definitely that's a great way to start. You put your pros on your servers, you start your essentials into your less important environments or workstations, and then as you recognize necessity for having more, or you deploy more and more tools to them, it makes sense to migrate to pro licenses, and that's a great way to ramp up.
Yeah, and what we see often happening, like Scott said, is the essentials are kind of targeted for let's say the customer is only paying me to monitor the server, but I know that they're going to call the help desk when the workstation fails. I'd rather proactively have some sort of agent deployed on the workstation so that remote control is faster when time comes to get there. And there might be some little add-on. So I couldn't convince the customer to do a all-in price for managing a workstation, but I could convince them just to displace their current AV or just displace something else or just do patch management. So it's a great foot in the door, and the common term that we have here is it's the thin edge of a wedge. So if you put the thin edge of a wedge in, you can slowly sneak in to get more and more of a customer's revenue. You don't want to show up with this big, one price only. To be able to get in the door with many different options has been successful for a lot of our partners.
Yeah, and you say sneak, but it really is. I found it hugely advantageous for the customer. I would go in, I would deploy Workstation Essentials, and reporting suddenly fills up with all the information about those devices, asset details, software details, vulnerabilities, all that sort of stuff. I now had access to. So when I came to quarterly business reviews, I would point out all the stuff I'm doing on servers, but then of course I would point out all the issues that exist on the workstations and say, look, if for a slightly smaller fee, I'm happy to fully manage these devices from a third-party patch perspective, a patch perspective. I'll manage your AV so that if there's a break, a breach happening, I can be more on top of that kind of thing. Ensure that AV is turned on every device in your environment so there are no security holes. There's a great conversation to be had there for sure, and I regularly had it. It was very effective.
Okay, great. Scott, there's a question around ticketing integration with N-central. Can you speak to that? So when you monitor something alert, how does it tell external systems that something's happened?
Yeah, for
creating
sure.
tickets.
Yeah, absolutely. So we integrate with most major PSAs in addition to MSP Manager, which is a great service management and ticketing solution. So especially if you're a growing MSP, it might be a really good solution for you. But basically what happens is when we have thresholds attached to every monitor in our system. You can either accept the defaults, which we've built for you, or you can adjust them either per device or globally or per customer, or however you choose to do it, very simply. When one of those thresholds is breached, it fires off what we call a notification. Those notifications can also be tied to ticketing. So when a notification triggers off for perhaps critical disk failure on a server, I can have a notification happen that triggers what we call a ticketing recipient. Simply, it reaches out to your ticketing system, says, hey, we have something that you're going to care about. It'll generate that ticket through APIs directly into your PSA and manage that ticket through its life cycle. So as you deal with the problem and the problem is resolved and Central detects the problem's resolved, it can either close the ticket, it can leave the ticket open with a slight change to its settings. So instead of new, it might say pending or resolved, waiting for verification, or however you have your PSA set up. We can pull that information of how your PSA is set up and manipulate it directly. So very simply, notifications trigger, we can then trigger tickets into your system, and then we can manipulate those tickets moving forward.
Okay, great. A couple more questions here, and then we'll be at the top of the hour, but we'll get through as many as we can. Scott, someone's saying that they're primarily a Cisco shop, so they're wondering at what point would I use N-central for monitoring of network devices, and then when would I decide that I need to go above and beyond that to use something like our parent company, SolarWinds NPM, or really in-depth network monitoring tools? Yeah,
that's a good point. Well, what I find is most people stick with N-central for basic monitoring. So that is connectivity, maybe backing up the configuration of the device, traffic through the device, interface health, and some other essentials like that. When you start needing additional tools, you're starting to look for things like network forensics. Ali here spends too much time on YouTube. I need to be able to narrow it down to Ali and his bandwidth consumption of watching cat videos.
I keep telling you I'm a creative person and I need to rest my mind, Scott.
Right. So when you get to the point where you start needing to do traffic analysis and digging into what is going through those routers, not just simply volume, that's when you're going to be looking at an additional tool. But typically you won't be leaving N-central for that. You'll be bringing in an additional tool to do that with. SolarWinds, of course, has a lot of tools like that. That's really probably what I would be doing, is looking for a tool specific to the problem at that point, because at that point, the thing you buy is really going to be very custom, very tailored to the problem you're experiencing.
Okay, great. Scott, someone's asking about the N-central agent on endpoints. Can you speak to, is there a performance impact? Do I need specific hardware, anything like that?
Gotcha. Not really. The agent is simply a Windows service that runs, so it's not particularly impactful on any given device. You include AV to that. AV always has an impact of a marginal amount. The latest AVD6, though, really cuts that down, so it really doesn't have much of an impact at all. So no, I wouldn't really say so. Any impacts you see will be things that are system maintenance. So running patch management, for example, of course, has a small impact, but it would if you did it directly through Windows. So no, the N-central agents are mature at this point. We've been using it for years and years and years and refining it for years and years and years. So it's a pretty solid little service and doesn't really cause much of an impact on a device.
Yeah, I remember when we launched N-central 10 almost 2 years ago, a big focus of that was reducing the footprint of bandwidth and CPU performance. And I think we cut it by 2/3. So that was years ago that we improved that.
Yeah, and I mean, what you want to watch out for, some RMM platforms have like a real-time communication with their agents. That can have some pretty serious bandwidth implications. And what you want to look for is something that has the ability to throttle those, or time delays on communication, because you really don't typically need to hear from an agent every second. You need to hear from it every 60 seconds or what have you. So look for a tool, like N-central, that is going to give you that ability to do that. So I think we've spent a lot of time refining that process to the point where it gives you the information you need when you need it without being overly impactful on the system at all.
Okay, Scott, there's a couple questions about pricing, which I love that people are asking that. Unfortunately, we can't get into it, but there were similar questions about licensing breakdown. Can you speak to the workstation, server, network device, just the fact that there are different tiers and different device classes?
Yeah, sure. And when you sign up for a trial, you're definitely going to get contacted by one of our account executives and probably a sales engineer, just asking if you need any assistance or what have you. They're really there just to help you through your trial and to see if we're the right fit for you. That's really their interest. But they would be the best people to talk to about that kind of thing, because they have deep details depending on the kind of environment you have, the kind of devices you're likely to onboard, and your needs. So they're really going to try and understand that best. But you're right, there's different pricing for things like servers, workstations, network devices, etc. But they'll break all that down for you for sure.
Okay, so everyone, if you want to leave your GoToWebinar app open, I can answer the rest of the questions. We don't have time to get into everything now, but I will go through everyone's questions and answer them. You don't have to sit there and wait for my response, but if you leave the app open, then you'll see my response once it comes through. So thanks for having me today, Scott. I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ali. And I hope everybody got a lot out of today's webinar. I know technical walkthroughs can be sometimes not as exciting as you want them to be. So I hope that we've made it exciting for you, and you've learned a lot. If you have any questions at all, of course, our job is to answer them. So we're very happy to answer those for you. And we really do feel that N-central is an excellent platform to build your MSP on. So we'd definitely be excited to talk to you. So definitely go give it a trial. And if you have any questions, reach out to the sales engineering team. They're there for you. And thank you very much, and have a great day or evening, depending on where you are in the world today. Thanks, Ali.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye now.